Well, hello, broadcast. So we're doing a Facebook Live today in our month on contextualising. And today I really want to talk about how you learn your city. So there's been plenty written about how we contextualise and how we do that as church planters and church. And all of that stuff was written by people who are much cleverer than me. And so today, really, I want to kind of break it down into a very basic form and think about how we learn about the city or the town or the village that we live in. And so I really want to ask the question, well, what's the culture? So if I'm learning about my city, I want to learn about the culture of the place. And what I mean by that is kind of how we do things around here. What's the way of doing things? How do we behave? How do people behave in this city? And I grew up in a bunch of London satellite towns in Woking and Bedford. These places are very different to Manchester. We also, me and the family, before we lived in Manchester, we had about 10 years in Birmingham. And Birmingham, again, is a very different city. Now, size-wise, it's pretty similar. But actually, the culture, the way people do things, the way people talk to each other, the way that they party, even the way that they work, the way industry is built in the different cities, actually there's quite a lot of difference there. And so there's a lot to learn in these, depending on the town that you live in. And so I've been thinking, well, how do we learn our city? Well, I think the first thing we need to think about is our own humility. And I had to learn this a little bit the hard way. I had to learn, actually, as a church planter coming into the city, what I should do is be quiet. In fact, be silent. And actually, sometimes we come in, we can be quite bombastic, quite noisy. We're here to save the city. We want to see our city changed, all of this sort of thing. We want to advance, all of that sort of stuff. But actually, most people tend to quite like the place that they live. People who don't go to church, non-believers, actually tend to think quite highly of the place. And I found that in Manchester, actually, there's a great deal of civic pride. And so me talking about how the city needed to change and we're the saviour of the city actually wasn't very helpful for people. As well for Christians who've been in the city for many years longer than me, working very hard and may be here many years after I've gone. Actually, for those people as well, it's a little bit offensive. You kind of pouring scorn on the work that they've done. So actually, to learn the city, learn the culture, learn the place, some humility was required. I'm not here to be its judge. I'm not even here to be its saviour. That's really important. The second thing I think we learn in terms of how we learn our city is to enjoy ourselves. And actually, I've heard a number of people who have gone abroad to plant in other places, and it's an immediate kind of plan and strategy that actually we need to learn about our city. We need to learn the language, obviously. There's the simple, how do you navigate around a town that you've never been in before in a completely foreign country? Even the basic things like shopping and getting on a bus become quite complicated. So you're obviously there to kind of learn the culture. But actually, if we're living in the UK, in our home country, and we move from one place to another, actually, we need to learn it there as well and enjoy ourselves. So I decided that we would have a lot of fun in Manchester. We treat this place as a tourist, which is quite easy with the kids, all the museums, all the art galleries, all of that stuff was a lot of fun. But after I've been in Manchester about a month, a friend of mine who I was good mates with in Birmingham, a guy called Raj, got in contact with me and said, Tim, I used to go clubbing in Manchester all the time. There's one particular nightclub, let's go there. And I was like 33, which, let's be honest, is too old for nightclubs. But I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go along. And I knew I was in trouble when the time for leaving my house was just before midnight to get to this club. And I don't think I got home till about 7 o'clock the next morning. It was, yeah, I'm way too old for that stuff. But he took me to this nightclub and I learned a huge amount about Manchester city centre nightlife on that evening. And I realised that you actually can only listen to house music with chemical stimulation if you're going to listen to it all night. If you have none of that, then actually it becomes quite repetitive. But most importantly, I learned all of these kids, these young people, and it was in August as well, so it wasn't very studenty, so it was very northern young people, had a very particular way of relating to each other and having fun and partying. And to also realise that actually this was nothing like any church anywhere, and we actually had a real job to do to be able to relate to these people, to get to know them. And so cultural experiences are very important when you get into your city. And actually, I have a great affection for Manchester now, perhaps more than I've ever had for any place that I've lived. And I think that was because I went out of my way to find out stuff. And so now I can say I love Manchester. It's a hashtag I'll throw on the end of a tweet fairly often. But actually it's because of the process that we went through to learn our city now means that we love our city, which I think is really important when you're trying to reach out. If you're reaching out from a place of actually loving this place, I think that's really very helpful. And finally, so if we've talked about being humbled, like actually enjoying our city, finally, we did quite a lot of work online in terms of the social media and things like that, particularly when we first moved up. So when I first moved to Manchester, I found as many bloggers and tweeters and writers as I could who were talking about the culture of the city as well as creating a lot of the culture of the city. And this worked on a big scale for the whole of Manchester. So there's, you know, any number of cultural websites and blogs and things like that for the whole city, which would be pretty well known and get into the national press fairly often. But there's also, we discovered, lots of really niche things, whether that's for local neighbourhoods or very specific cultural activities that people were discussing, were creating online. And so becoming part of those conversations and reading that was very helpful. And actually, the area of the city we lived in, I got involved in a local blog just for about 6-7 months or so, and was writing on that for a while. And it was a great way to meet a bunch of people and to get involved in the area. In fact, I actually wrote a series of blogs about the kebab houses of Levenshulme, and so went and sampled any number of kebabs from our fine high street and then wrote about them. And that was just a really good fun way of meeting people. It gave my wife food poisoning twice, but it was worth doing nonetheless. And so I just want us to think about how do we learn our city, particularly as planters. And we have a very clear sense of what we want to do and what we want to achieve. And sometimes we can forget that we are going into a place with an existing way of doing things, an existing way of living, existing culture. And we want to be a blessing to that. We don't want to be a confrontation to that. Actually, we want to love people and take them with us, not tell them off. And so learning a city was a really important part of that. So there are going to be more videos, more content about contextualization over the next month. I hope that's been helpful. Leave comments. We'll try and answer questions as best we can. Thank you very much.